Hello, everyone. This is Constance from Mysterious Galaxy. Tonight we have a very, very fun event. We are celebrating the book Good Neighbors by Sarah Langan, and I'm going to try and say that G is a hard G, which is hard for my mouth for some reason. And she is going to be in conversation with Hilarie Burton. Now, just a quick little bio for both of you. Sarah is a Columbia MFA graduate and 3-time recipient of the Bram Stoker Award, which is just so freaking awesome, and is the author of 3 novels, including The Keeper. She grew up on Long Island and currently lives up in LA, just a little bit north of us in San Diego. And then Hilarie is an actress and producer, known for roles as Peyton on One Tree Hill, as well as her work as an MTV VJ, and her leading roles in popular Hallmark movies. And she lives on a working farm in the Hudson River Valley, and their son Gus and baby daughter and all the fuzzy animals in the world, which please tell me all the fuzzy creatures have made quarantine better, because how does a fuzzy face just not make the world better?
Yeah,
but
they have no idea anything weird's going on.
Right? They're like, I still eat the same grass and I still walk in the same patterns.
That's it. But right now they're all in the same snowstorm.
Oh, but like I said, we are here to celebrate Good Neighbors, which is a title that is somewhat misleading because these neighbors are not necessarily the best neighbors to one another. But essentially, just to give you guys a quick little sneak peek about the book you'll be hearing about. So, Good Neighbors, you have this beautiful, picturesque suburb where everyone is very, very nice, you know. Everything is quiet and lovely. And then you have this new family that moves in that, you know, they don't fit the exact cookie cutter mold of this place. And then, to make things even more interesting, a hole appears in the ground and someone's daughter disappears. And then accusations begin. Search for the daughter, because finding her is somewhat important, as you might think, begins. And the adventure takes off from there. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Hilarie. But real quick, the Vanna White section, as you guys all know, we have our chats to the right. If you have a question, make sure you ask, because questions are the most fun part of an event. So if you look down below, you'll see where it says, ask a question. And as that would imply, that is indeed where you ask a question. Just click the button to do so. And then go and purchase this amazing book, because a good read is the best way to celebrate being at home. So if you click the purchase book button, it will take you where you can go and buy Good Neighbors, as well as Hilarie's book, The Real Diaries. And on that note, I will pass it off to you, Hilarie, and I will see you guys at the end of the event.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for the nice introduction. Sarah, hi.
Hi.
I'm so excited to geek out in front of everybody else, because we talked about like talking on the phone at some point, and there was a part of me that was like, maybe it's better if I just geek out for an audience, because I have been a fan of yours since the summer. I came to you through a short story that I read of yours. For my birthday, a girlfriend of mine gave me a compilation called Hex Life, which is all like different witchy stories, and it was a birthday present, and we were in the midst of like a shitty lockdown. And so I'm reading these stories to kind of go to a different place. And yours, The Night Nurse, just stood out so far from all the others. Not to say the others weren't great, but I connected with yours in a way because it had this subtext of mom rage that I feel like more of us need to explore.
Yeah.
Is that your shtick? Are you the mom rage lady? Is that your vibe?
I think I am, you know.
Yeah.
The guy with that, there are 2 editors on that collection or that anthology. And the guy who asked me for a story, his name's Chris Golden, had asked me for a story before. And I wrote something and it was like, not a good story. Like, it's not good. And like, he took it anyway with no comment, or he was like, that's unusual. I don't understand it. So it'll probably win awards, you know? And I was like,
It's art.
You know, it's like, this is not the best. So when he asked me for the next one, what was nice was that story that wasn't the best was also, I was trying something new, you know, and I was experimenting, and sometimes it doesn't work. So with Night Nurse, I was like, he's going to take whatever I give him. Like, no one does that. So I just did what I really wanted to do, you know, which was, I had seen Tully in the movie Diablo Cody, And I had sat in that with my husband on one side and my husband's DP on the other side, these two guys. And like halfway through, I just started crying. I was crying. And they were like, they have kids.
It makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah. They were like, ugh. So I was
gross,
like,
gross.
Yeah, there's just this feeling of when you have a child and it's the middle of the night and no one's there to help you and you haven't slept for days. And like my husband travels. I think your husband traveled too.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is terrifying. And I feel so alone and it's never talked about. Or I maybe it is, but I don't see it. I don't see it represented.
No. There's an intimacy that is in that short story that exists between vulnerable mothers and the strangers that they often end up relying on. And that intimacy, the trust there is something you hope will go right and like lead to, a nice friendship. But what if it doesn't? That's creepy.
Well, it's also, I actually was reading the first few chapters of Rural Diaries, and that feeling of being like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how to be a good mother. I don't know what that is. Like, I had no skills. Like, I came home from the hospital and I was like, I know how to nurse you. Like, that's it. Like, I don't know what your cries are.
Well, okay, so let's get some backstory on you. Were you, like, I was a creepy kid. So having to turn into a mother, into something maternal was a hard left turn for me. And from your writing, I'm gathering that you were kind of a weirdo too. Is that off base?
I was a total weirdo. And the culture that I grew up in did not value the work of women. And as a consequence, I didn't value the work of women. And so I just always was academic. I was always, my job was important. And relationships, I did not have the same kinds of skills in. I mean, even with my husband, I didn't have great relationship skills. So having kids, it just was, I didn't know what to do, but I also sort of, this thing that I had always looked down on, keeping a house and all the things that are attendant with that are really so important, which I think is, what I'm trying to talk about in Good Neighbors, which is if your house isn't in order, nothing else matters. So yeah, I mean, it was just like, it was a revelation. I had to be a totally different human being having kids.
Well,
because they're like, I'm going to do a good job, or I'm going to just like, why did I have them? So
your writing is such a throwback to me, to writers who I grew up on, that I adored, the Dorothy Parkers, the Flannery O'Connors, the Carson McCullers, and the Shirley Jacksons. Like when I read your short story and I read your book, I was like, oh my God, we have always lived in the castle. When you're just, that book meant so much to me. And it was because it was describing outrageous batshit stuff going on, but in a really kind of matter-of-fact way. And we just handle the crazy. Calm down. The characters in your book are dealing with some insane stuff going on their little street. And they just go about their business and kind of fall into this mob mentality with such ease. It felt very vintage. It's like a story that's always existed, which I loved. I see that you're one of the founding members of the Shirley Jackson Award. When did you guys start that?
Well, I think it was like 15 years ago. And the other people on the board are Paul Tremblay, John Langan, F. Brett Copps, Jack Haranga, and new members, Victor Laval, and I'm blanking, Joanne Cox, and Linda. I don't know. I'm blanking. But anyway, so those are the other people who started it together. She's going to write me like, why did you do that? I'm nervous. But so we started it together. And honestly, I had read Dance Macabre when I was in high school, which is that Stephen King book about how, all the different horror history. And he talks about The Haunting of Hill House. And
Mhm.
it blew my mind. I read The Haunting of Hill House in high school and loved it. And then in college, I read We've Always Lived in the Castle. But then I kind of, her stories are amazing too. There's this one that really hit with me about this woman who has kids, like a house full of kids and all these responsibilities. And I don't know if you've had this, but when you have to go to the dentist, it's like you're so happy, you know?
Oh yeah.
Like,
It's why moms go to Target.
Yeah, I gotta go to
Yeah.
Target. So she goes to the dentist, and what I always do is I fall asleep in the chair. Like I love it. And she's there, and they give her the gas and the Novocaine, and she doesn't remember who she is, and she's completely disoriented.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just feel like that's just the state of these so many identities that women have to have, that I love. And I think she was talking about that, and it's still really relevant now, you know?
Oh my, even more so. I mean, the timing of this book coming out could not have been more sinister. And that's when I first started like reaching out to you on social media. That was the biggest compliment I could give you. I was like, you're so sinister. Your writing is just, it's invasive, and that's fantastic. With quarantine, with lockdown, with the pandemic, this idea that we're all trapped in our spaces, we're all trapped in our houses, and we have to come to terms with who we really are and who we have allowed into our orbits. That's something that you go on a pretty deep dive in here in Good Neighbors. There's a lot about childhood trauma with one of your characters, Gertie. Ray Schroeder, who is like the best villain ever. You know, she's certainly got her own bag of crap to deal with. Without giving away like all the, you know, fun parts of the book for all our friends. We've got 167 people hanging out with us. How would you describe the book to them so they have, you know, a good sense of foreboding going into it?
I think it's a fish out of water story. So the Wilds are this family who are from East New York, which is not a great place to live. And they are scarred. So the mom is like an ex-beauty pageant queen who was used badly by her family, married Arlo, who's older than her, a former rock star, lost all the money, was a junkie, is in rehab. They've got these kids, they've been saving forever, and they have this dream to move up in the world, not for themselves, but for their kids. And so they could buy in East New York, but they decide to buy in this idyllic cul-de-sac on Maple Street, where their kids are going to go to a good school, and their kids are going to be friends with the right people, and they're going to learn to fit in, and they'll do what it takes. And they get there, and the problem is that, first off, the neighbors are very clannish, as they are. But the other thing is that they become friends with their Schroeders, who are next door. And Rhea Schroeder is I don't want to give too much away, befriends Gertie, the mother, and then begins to think that maybe Gertie is dangerous. Maybe Gertie isn't really a good friend. Look at the way she keeps her house. You know, look at the things she's done. So she begins to spread rumors to the rest of the neighborhood. This happens pretty early on, that keep the Wilds from being invited to parties and stuff. And then a sinkhole opens that we've kind of known all along is going to open, because this story takes place in the near future when global warming's more prominent and people are more anxious. Just generally, the state of the world is more anxious even than now, which I think is not a crazy thing to say will happen. And so this queen bee mom, her daughter falls down the sinkhole, and she's like, why was my daughter outside anyway? She was told wasn't supposed to go. She was running from the Wilds. I think the Wilds did something. The Wilds did something to her. And then the neighbors all think, yeah, it was totally the Wilds. And so things kind of snowball. It's like a game of telephone or dominoes, where constant misunderstandings. No one ever directly confronts them, and things get worse and worse. And they're stuck on this cul-de-sac. So.
And they're stuck. Yeah, I Googled the hell out of you because I, was cyber stalking you as a fan. And I saw that you have from NYU a master's in environmental toxicology, which I didn't know until after I'd read this book. And now going back and looking at all of the things you've written, environment plays a huge role in a lot of your storytelling, whether it's like a dystopian future or it's, this insidious sinkhole in the middle of this community. What does the sinkhole represent? Is that a metaphor for something?
Yeah. I mean, for me, the sinkhole is a couple of things. I don't know. There's this part of Passage to India where the main character is in a cave and she has this revelation in the cave and you don't know what it is. You don't know what's going on, but there's something vaguely supernatural about it. And she comes out, and when she comes out, she's convinced that the Indian man has sexually abused her in some way. And then the trial begins. I think I have this right. I read this like 10 years ago, but it's always stuck with me. Something happened in the cave. And it's like, is it supernatural? Is it like global warming is so creepy to me because the temperature's changing and suddenly, wait, is there like an old strain of, definitely there's anthrax melting, killing cows in Siberia, but what else is in there? And like, why is it hailing on a sunny day? And why are these things that we didn't believe were part of our laws of reality sort of entering our sphere? And I think that the sinkhole is that, but I also feel like it's up to the reader because there's a lot that like, I'm not really, I write by the seat of my pants. So stuff like you could say something I'd be like, that's probably true. But I think it's also about this future, this really scary, undetermined future that is threatening to swallow our children, and it's unfair to burden them with that because there's this other strain of Good Neighbors that's so much about the children and them resisting their parents.
It's got a really beautiful Stand By Me quality to the children's part of the story. I mean, the sinkhole is an intimidating thing to think about as a parent because you don't know when the world's going to open up and swallow your child. That idea is terrifying to me.
Well, so we had in my children's elementary school was closed in a lockdown because of a possible shooter 2 years ago. And you get the call. Yeah, you get the call and you're like, what's worse? It's this terrible fear of like, why is the world like this? It doesn't seem like we were able to fix it. No matter what we do, it's like, no, these laws aren't going to change. But on top of that, my first instinct was, who is this guy? Where does he live?
Yeah.
So we had a town hall meeting about it, about who this guy was. And apparently, he was a neighbor and it was unclear how threatening he actually was. It was just that he'd said too many times, like, you guys are pissing me off. You have to be quiet. I've got a gun. And the principal was like, you can't keep saying that. I'm calling a SWAT, I'm calling this. And then people with rifles at the school. But so it got so much more tense, and I'm not sure necessarily. So by the time I was at the town hall with other parents, we were talking about going to his house. We were talking about taking his car away from him, like just crazy mob mentality.
Escalating.
We escalated it to the point, and I was thinking, I was like this. My husband was like, "You're crazy. You don't know this man." And the thing is, we don't have the money.
It's fine, babe. I'll get him.
Yeah. No, but it was like, we didn't have money at the school for a school nurse, but we wanted to get money together for a security guard with a gun. This was in like the height of my, I left the meeting and was like, oh, I can't be with these people. This is too much. But
these people don't make me better. It's true. I mean, we're hearing so much now about mob mentality and tribalism and those things, those trends that are clearly happening in our country. And so you put out this book, in the middle of a pandemic where everybody's locked down, kind of the way they are in your book. My own personal experience, and I texted you about this. We were filming our episode of The Walking Dead, and for safety reasons, to keep us away from everybody else, we were living on set in Rick Grimes' house. And so it's like a whole neighborhood that the studio owns, and no one lives in any of the houses. There's like 2 neighbors. And my children and my husband and I are surrounded by this 20-foot metal wall. And there's like debris and shrapnel everywhere because it's supposed to be the apocalypse inside the walls of Alexandria. And I'm reading your book like, holy shit, it's happening, it's here. The election was happening. People were like marching and like carrying guns and stuff. And it was just the stress and the amount of tension in the air was palpable. And your book was such a cathartic thing to read. Because like I said, the children are the heart of the book and really lovely. Who did you base these kids on? How close are they to like your kids or kids that you knew growing up?
I think I pretty much made them up, but I will say that I grew up on a block with a whole bunch of kids when I was little. Yeah. And it was like, we had the mean kids and we had the manhunt and we had the nice kids. And it was like this crazy, we would play manhunt in the summertime. I don't know if you did this when you were a kid,
I was locked in my yard. My parents didn't let me go anywhere. So I read about these kids running around. I'm like, wow. That's why I was locked in my yard, because you bad kids causing trouble.
No, we would have teams, and it was like, it felt real, like, because I was one of the youngest. All the other kids were older, and we would take like 3 people's houses, 3 yards, and do a manhunt on teams, and it felt like war. It felt so serious. But how real are they? Yeah. I don't know. I love Julia. I can say that, and I can say that best friends are so special at that age. I think the most important thing to me was depicting that friendship between Shirley and Julia. And, I still talk to my best friend that I met in 6th grade. And I was like, you're my one. You're going to be my best friend forever. And I talked to her like Friday morning. She lives in Switzerland now.
That's exciting.
I wanted to visit, but the pandemic. But I think there's something when you're really open at that age and you're able to find those friendships that they open you up to something that's different from your family, but feels like family. And you have this whole new perspective of like, you have this different religion. What's your religion? You don't believe this? Oh, well, maybe I don't believe that. And it just snowballs, and you become your own person through those friendships. So that was really...
You're malleable at that age, as opposed to when you become friends with someone as an adult, you're a little set in your ways. As a child, you're so malleable and you mold each other at that time.
And I think you're also like open to an all-in friendship. It's like, you want to call me every day. We just hang out all the time. We do stuff together.
I'm in love with you. Yeah. I love you.
Yeah. But you can't do that, Like,
well, I did it with you. I texted you and was like, I don't know you, lady, but I love you. We're best friends now, Sarah. Sorry. So I want to talk a little bit, a lot of the climate in our culture right now is very like middle America, suburbs versus coastal elite. There's been a divide, and that divide exists in this book. The characters of Gertie and Arlo are really different from other characters I've read. I naturally was drawn to Gertie because I've always felt like the tacky person in any situation. I'm either dressed up too much or my hair's too big or I'm not, like I'm just always uncomfortable but trying too hard. And so I really loved her and her level of optimism. And so Arlo, meanwhile, like reminds me of my husband, the guy covered in tattoos, like trying to just be a really good dad and is a little like not what you would envision as like the stay-at-home dad. And so I wonder if there were people in pop culture or just references that helped you shape those two.
I just go in my own head. I go deeper and deeper with characters. I know that sounds strange, but I just like, and then I just think if that were me, so for them, what was important to me and what I feel like is the value that they have is that they never stop trying. And like, they're just so damaged that it could really easily be that they're constantly fighting. And there's so many ways it could have gone wrong. But, I think they just have this endless optimism. But I mean, like, where did they come from? We moved to Los Angeles.
Like, I'm envisioning like Scott Weiland as Arlo.
Who's Scott Weiland? What I mean? I don't even know.
Stone Temple Pilots. Who, like, what band? Oh. What band in your head was Arlo?
Oh. I don't, I honestly, I'm sorry. I didn't even, I used to go when I was in New York. I just saw a lot of music. And I used to hang out in the East Village a lot. And I saw a lot of used up musicians. So in my mind, Arlo's dad had been an almost something and was just getting high at 2A, that bar. And I don't know if you know that bar. Yeah.
Babe, I'm a Bowery girl. Yeah.
Oh, right, sure. Right. He was just at 2A all the time. And then his son was in a squat, like waiting for him to come home. So in my, like, that was always, and so it was less about what the band was than that sort of that history of music and damage sort of mixed together.
Yeah, I mean, that scene in New York, when I first moved to New York, it was still scary. It was still like you didn't go. It's a little like Disney World right now. But at the time, you didn't go down to that part of New York because you're right. It was a lot of junkies, and the art there was beautiful, and the music there was great. But it was a damaging place to hang out.
You did not walk barefoot.
Oh, you still don't. Like, I don't care how much they clean it up. Hard pass. But who was your favorite character to write? Do you have a favorite character when you write?
Yeah, Rhea was definitely my favorite character. Well, so Gertie and Rhea.
I don't want to give too much of her away because she's just so rich.
Well, so I studied narcissism and I did like a super deep dive on that. And the stuff I learned was amazing. It was just, you can have these injuries and not know them, and you can be a narcissist, and the last thing a narcissist ever knows is that they are one, because it's so important that they have this perfect mask. That's their coping mechanism when they're growing up. They've had enough abuse that they now have a personality dysfunction. And in order to conceal it, in order to get through the day, they make themselves appear perfect. And it's so important that other people reflect perfection back at them. And other people are like, you're amazing, you're so good. And if like that's they feed on it like monsters, and they're really injured. And I have such compassion for them. But I feel like the beginning of the book is where Rhea is starting to realize that there's something wrong with her. And her whole life, she's just kept people this far, at a huge distance. Because subconsciously she knew like that they'd call her on it. And she's finally like, there's something wrong and I need to fix it. And I don't know how. And I'm so scared of taking this mask off. And I think I have a lot of sympathy for her.
Do you think, her daughter is entering her teenage years? I, as a mother, have not tolerated things since having my daughter that I was fine with when I had a son. Like the whole Me Too movement exploded, right when I was pregnant with my daughter. And so watching her daughter, Shirley, come of age and start to have relationships and branch out, how much of that do you think affected Rhea in her panic?
I think a ton, actually. I think that's a really, really good question. And I think Shirley is everything Rhea wants to be.
Mm-hmm.
And there's competition in that she's unaware of.
It's a hard deal, man. That cycle, the mom-daughter competition cycle is brutal. And you go there, which is, it's fantastic. When you're finished with a book like this, who's the first person that you share it with? Like, do you let your husband read things first, or do you try to keep it? Is there like a home work split?
When we had, this is an odd answer, but he's always writing so much and I'm writing so much that we couldn't read each other's stuff, all of it.
Jeff and I don't watch each other's stuff a lot because there's so much of it and it just blurs the lines.
Yeah. No, I mean, if we work together, then we're like, oh, this is fun, but we don't. Mm-hmm. So my first readers, I have a writing group in Los Angeles now. And cool. I gave it to them, and then I have friends, and then I have my agent who is like, her name is Stacia Decker. She's amazing, and she just edits the shit out of everything I write. She's like, she will give me 10 pages of typed notes, and
oh no,
like, no,
fix it. Yeah, I don't want it. Yeah,
she's always right though. I'll go for a walk. I'll come back.
Do you ever think about like when you're writing, because you write a lot of dark material. And this is something that I've always thought about because I always knew I wanted kids. Do you ever think about your kids growing up and reading your things?
I do. And I want them to know that when I'm giving voice to my emotions and sometimes in my feelings, and sometimes it's dissatisfaction in my role, that I'm thinking of them too. And that I want them to know those feelings are okay. Yeah. And then I want them, because I have 2 girls, and I want them to, they don't need to see me as a human because I'm their mother. They shouldn't have to. Yeah. But one day I want them to understand when they're mothers that these feelings are okay, that it's fair to be angry if they're not treated equally. And that's so much about my work is about that. And it does concern me. I think that we're going to have more and more conversations as they get older, that they understand that they are the most important thing in the world to me, more important than my work, honestly.
Yeah. Well, and how many women just left the workforce during the pandemic because it's been this mass statement of our kids are more important than our work, They
have to be, and someone has to say that because they have to have that. And it's so unfair. And for these women who've had to leave the workforce because you don't get it back. It's not like, you can just come back at the same salary.
No, you got to work your way. It's chutes and ladders. You work your way all the way up again. And so for women like you who are articulating the wants and needs and frustrations of their audience, to me, that's always been the job of art, is to articulate other people's feelings so they can process them. You have set up an office in your home. Like I saw a post that you put on Instagram. Is this your office that you've set up since you've been working at home?
This is my garage.
Yeah, it is.
That's true. I'm not gonna
show from my garage. I get it.
There's bikes right here, and but it's great. I actually love it. because it's my own and there's doors on it.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm not sure I would go back to a writing space because the kids will at some point not be in Zoom school, and then I'll have this space to myself.
Yeah.
So,
What's your favorite item in that room?
oh, it's the Maple Street poster right here, which is that Twilight Zone episode, the monsters do on Maple Street. That was some of the ideas for the book. Yeah.
That's really cool. Okay, so the suburbs. I feel like some people could walk away from this book thinking that like you hate the suburbs. How do you feel about the suburbs?
So they're home, you know, they're where I grew up.
Yeah.
And like I only write about things I love. I'm not gonna, you know,
spend time.
Find some town that I couldn't stand and write a story about it. So when I was saying that I met this friend when I was in 6th grade and we talked on the phone, I have a lot of friends like that I have the luxury of having because I come from a place. So I don't hate the suburbs, but I do chafe against conformity. And where I grew up, everyone was the same. And I mean, and it was like just tiny differences, and it felt to me, and I felt that made everyone more competitive than they needed to be and more suspicious of anyone who wasn't the same race, the same religion, the same, even to the ethnicity. Like it was like there's some Irish, there's some Italians. It was like, who cares?
Oh my gosh,
differences, you know.
I grew up in the suburbs in Virginia, and it, you know, I ran to New York City for college, and I remember talking to my roommates and like telling them stories about like the dead body we found in the woods, and like, you know, the teacher who was sleeping with the students, and like all these like outrageous things that happen in the suburbs. And all of these girls from like Miami and like LA were just like, the fuck are you talking about? Like, where did you grow up? You know? And to me, I thought it was so wholesome because the biggest difference was like, oh, well, they go to the Catholic Church and they go to the Mormon Church and they're Baptists. Like you knew where every single person went to church. And I mean, it was just so mundane to me. But then you'd go and talk to people from other places, and it seems like a different planet. Yeah. Like my son right now, when he sees neighborhoods with sidewalks, they blow his mind because we live on a farm. He's like, look at all this concrete. This is crazy. You can ride bikes. Have your girls ever spent time like in the suburbs?
They love them.
Are you in suburban? Like, yeah.
My parents, they moved away from it, or my dad did, but they had a big house in the suburbs. And my kids were like, can we go? Can we go to the big house?
It's so awesome. They've got a big front yard and a mailbox.
And then the town pool is a really nice town pool. They love it. Yeah.
Town pool culture is a big deal that we don't have in our lives anymore. Thank God. My son just watched Stranger Things, and there's like the scenes with all the mothers at the pool. And I'm just like, I've dodged this bullet by living in obscurity out on a farm. It's great. I feel like we should probably let people ask some questions here because we've got 186 people joining us. Hi. Okay, hold on. I'm going to figure out how to do this. Okay, we have a question that says, question for you both. What do you do when you feel unmotivated or uninspired while writing a book? I love Rural Diaries, and I'm looking forward to reading Good Neighbors. Oh, thank you so much. What do you do when you just don't feel like working?
I don't, but it doesn't happen that often. And usually when it does happen, it's because I'm exhausted. So I figure like,
it's been a rough year, Sarah. It's been brutal.
But I don't know.
Have you been writing? Have you been writing during lockdown?
You feel like you've got a lot on your plate. What do you do when you're?
Oh, dude, I do manual labor. The second I'm just like, I can't write right now, I'll go and I'll paint something. And so I'm working on my second book right now. And I just got here to Georgia where my husband's filming. And it's good that I'm in a rental house because I can't do home improvement projects on someone else's house. Like I can't just go knock down a wall in somebody else's house. So I have to like buckle down and sit down at the dining room table and actually work, which is good. I get distracted by, like, I'll see a room and I'll be like, this would look so much better painted black. I've painted my entire house black during the pandemic, which feels good. It's like living in a like warm little shadow. But yeah, manual labor is the thing that makes me feel better.
You sound like my husband. He built a fence in the backyard. He ripped everything up. He chopped trees and their roots out. That's what he did for his breaks because there's nowhere to go.
Well, and I wonder if he feels the same way I do, where it's like I can put the sentences together in my head before I actually commit them to paper or commit them to, computer. Is that what the kids are writing on these days? Computers. I'm still writing in a notebook. Do you handwrite anything or do you just go straight to computer?
Straight to the computer. Yeah. I'll write in a journal or I'll put like a poem. Every once in a while I'll put a poem. And you can't write
Did you journal as a kid?
It was so scary to me to be a writer. I knew from when I was 4 on that that's what I wanted, that I didn't do it until I was in college, which is weird, but it was.
So then what's the first thing you ever wrote?
Short story for my creative writing class called Necessities. That's, better left unpublished. But but I was like, oh, I can write. This works. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm into that. All right, let's see. Question for Sarah. The Wilde family is so incredibly unique and out of the box. Each one of them have their own quirks and funky personalities. Where did you draw inspiration for this family of misfits? And that is from Alex. Oh, thank you, Alex. We talked about that a little bit. What about little Larry? Where'd Larry come from?
I just know so many kids like that. And I honestly, being a little bit of a nerd and having like a nerdy bend, there's a lot of writers who have flat affects. I don't know. And like, that's what I was trying to think, like, what was that really smart, generous, sensitive person like as a child?
Yeah.
Probably a little like Larry, which
he's so sweet. Yeah. And it's interesting in the book how the kids take care of their parents in a way that when you're an adult, you forget you did that for your parents. Like I remember doing things like trying to look after my parents as a child. And now I look at my kids and I'm like, oh, is Gus managing me right now? Is that,
and
it's a sweet quality.
Yeah, I love it so much, but I'm also like, I have to, like, you want to find ways that they don't actually feel they have to do it or they're emotionally responsible for you.
I'm not going to fall apart.
You're still going to get your lunch,
Yeah. I'll pick you up from school. Don't forget. Okay, we've got a question from Samantha that says, after you finish writing a book, do you have to hold on, where'd it go? And separate from characters like an actor might from the character they're portraying? Oh, that's a really good question.
That I do have to do. It's strange. Like I in my head, I kind of pretend to be them while I'm writing it. And then it takes me, I do physical exercise. So I'll go for a swim or I'll do some like run or something to like wash them out of me. But yeah, they live in me a little bit until I'm done and then they're gone.
Well, and then, what do you do when you're done? Like, I've talked to a couple writers who are like, I have to mourn them. Like I have to mourn these people who aren't in my life anymore. I
guess I still think about them for a little while after it's done. And I wonder if I gave them the right ending, and they're part of me wants them to, I want like everything to be okay. I do, which is for the stories that I write is kind of nuts. But I think, did I give them dignity? you know, and sometimes I'll have thoughts about, oh, well, you know, the scene with Gertie where she drives away from Julia when Julia is begging for help. I hated writing that. And it came to me later, and I hated doing that to Gertie, which sounds strange, but I knew it killed Gertie that she'd failed her child in that way. But I also knew, like, that's what we do sometimes, is we fail our children, and it's human.
Yeah. Well, and you do the character a service by not just, like, so I make fun of the Christmas movies I do sometimes because it's just nice people in nice outfits doing nice things in nice places. And it's not, there's no growth, there's no, you know, there's no truth to it. And so to look at the ugly stuff is important. And her driving away from her daughter in that moment is an ugly thing that sets her up later to be better, you know, hopefully. What's been the hardest character you've ever had to write? Do you have a character from anything, from any book or short story where you're like, this one?
The one that I didn't want to keep going back to. Honestly, I think I would go back and say Rhea was the hardest one. And it was because, like, there's no monster in this story. There's just people who actually have good hearts. I feel like everyone except, like, some of those neighbors, but not the main families.
I know which ones you're talking about. It's those little feeder fish that hang on to Rhea that are just the worst.
They're the worst.
They're those girls that we hated in high school.
Yeah, who are just, like, steering her. They're Iago, you know. But I felt like with Rhea, that was when she does the wrong thing. I just felt like if she were conscious of her actions, she would never have done the thing she'd done. You know, I think there was this huge disconnect with her.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about, like, substance abuse is definitely a part of this story. And it's been a part of our, you know, during the pandemic, people have been relapsing hard. Where are you at with that in your storytelling?
Well, I was surprised by how much the role alcohol played in motherhood, which is, like, everywhere you go, it's like, it's mommy juice. And I was like, mommy juice? Like, I don't feel good when I have mommy juice. Like,
yeah, no, daytime drinking is not for me, dude.
It's huge though. And it's like culturally, like, we've earned it or something. And like, I was really surprised by how often a bottle got pulled out on play dates. And it's not, like, I get it, have fun. And some people have way better metabolisms than I have, you know.
You're like, I'm going to go swim. I'm swimming. Get out of here with your booze, with your rosé.
I can't, you know, I'm like up half the night with 3 glasses. I'm like, it's too much sugar for me. So, but
can't handle.
I think it's culturally unfair, you know, because I feel like it's pushed on us. Like, I think it's like, here's your reward. Here's another reward. That, and, like, it's not surprising that so many mothers were given Oxy. You know, it's like,
oh boy,
take an Oxy, you'll be okay. It's like, can you imagine?
It feels a little bit like
Oxy after having kids?
Oh my, no,
it's horrible.
No, I did natural childbirth because I was so scared of, like, a pill. I was like, oh no, I'll be hooked forever. I feel like moms of the 60s and 70s had coping mechanisms. You know, you, like, heard about Mommy's Little Helper and pills and diet pills and things like that. But it was all very hush hush. And so this new movement of, like, liberated moms were like, I'm going to drink in the open and I can do this because I've earned it. And you're right. It's become a huge cultural thing that, I mean, I live on a farm. So for me to get anywhere, I got to drive 40 minutes. So I'm probably not going to participate in, like, the mom booze party. But it definitely is a big part of Rhea's, like, social standing on this block.
Yeah. I mean, I think culturally, people who don't drink don't know what to do with themselves at these parties, these neighborhood gatherings that are just like booze fest, which I love alcohol. I'm not saying I don't. It's just, you know, there's a lot
Time
to
and
do in the
place.
day when you have kids. And I don't think it's helping anybody to be like, have your 3 glasses of wine, you earned it, sister. You know, it's like, I don't know. Maybe she earned an hour by herself. Like,
Yeah. I'm trying to read a book on my Kindle. All right, here's another question from Liz. She says, for both of you, what advice would you give people who just started to write? You've written a hell of a lot more than I have.
Just do it. You know, like,
yeah.
You know everything you need to know already. There's nothing somebody can tell you. Just sit down and find your way, because everybody's got their own way.
Yeah.
How about you?
I would say don't sit down and write to sell a story. Like, I've written so much stuff that no one will ever read. Like, when I die and my children find the trunks of just like notebooks full of stuff, it's stuff that I just wrote because I wanted to write it. You know, so many people feel pressured to write or to paint or to do arts and crafts or do something so they can sell it on Etsy. Like, if you want to write, maybe just write for you for a little bit. And then if you've worked on something that you really are proud to share, then share it. But I don't think, not everything has to be monetized. And I think there's a lot of honor in like doing something for yourself. It can feel really cathartic and nice.
That's totally true. Yeah.
All right. Which part of this book brought you the most joy to write?
I would say there's a part with the kids that I can't give away, but if
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I was like, yeah, like I was so happy for them.
Yeah.
And there was a part with Julia and a boy on the block that I was like, oh, I get to write something sweet that happens. Yeah. So I liked that one too. The kids were made me happy.
Do you feel like a kid sometimes? Like, do you still feel 15 inside?
I still feel 10 inside sometimes. You know, I have, you know, it's a spectrum. But
right on.
Yeah, you know, I have all those. There's this my daughter, no, I shouldn't say. I'll just, she told me something that reminded me so much of being her age and having these passionate feelings. And I feel like there's this little person inside of me who's still like, remember when you knew, like you saw The Breakfast Club and Ali Sheedy says, like, when you're grown up, your heart dies, and you knew it was true, and you swear to God you'd never be like that.
Yeah.
And like, but of course, your heart dies a little bit.
Yeah, that's why, oh man, you got to keep your house in order, like you said, right? That's like the whole point of being a grown-up. But if you keep it in order and you don't get wasted in the middle of the day, you've got free time to spend with your children at the end of the day, so they can remind you. Like, I watched Pretty in Pink with my son 3 weeks ago, and he's watching, he's like, I'm into this. Like, I love Ducky. Like, this is great. And right at the end, he's like, this movie's bullshit. She should have ended up with Ducky. And I was like, yes, I feel 10 years old again with you. Because had we been at a sleepover, we would have been like, yeah, this is the truth. That's the whole point of the kids, is to keep us little. Let's see, for both of you, Bex is saying, I am a reading teacher for elementary school students. Oh, hold on, where'd it go? Oh, yes. And I'm always trying to find great new authors or books for them. Do you have any recommendations? What do you got?
So my kids, Esperanza Rising. I'm sure she already knows about Esperanza Rising, but it's terrific. By Pam Muniz. There's a tilde on the N. And it's about a girl whose family loses their plantation in Mexico, and they have to be immigrants to California during the Dust Bowl. So it's like
Jesus.
the 1930s. And, you know, her dad's dead and there's no money and they're like sneaking into America. It's a really good story.
What did you read when you were little?
I never read young adult books. Maybe they weren't like a thing.
They weren't
like did
when we were little.
that?
No, they were just like, here's have a cough, go nuts.
Yeah. So I read Stephen King, but not in 6th grade. I thought Stephen King was way too boring, so I read John Saul and Dean Koontz. So I needed like so much more guts.
Yeah.
Lloyd Alexander.
I was into
5th grade. What did you read?
I was into true crime as a kid. Like I remember reading like everything I could get my hands on about Lizzie Borden. Like I was like, she didn't do it, guys. This is bullshit, you know. No, there was a book that Clive Barker wrote when I was in 5th grade. And it was the first book that made me cry. I was a kid that was really proud of myself for never, ever, ever crying. Ever. And I could watch My Girl. That's stupid, you know. But this book, The Thief of Always by Clive Barker, messed me up so deeply because a character in it turns into a fish, and I'll never forget it. And so I read it to Gus during the pandemic and just wept uncontrollably while I was reading him this. It was the first time I'd read it since I was 10. So it's a great book. But it also deals with like difficult parent-child relationships, and it doesn't treat kids like they're stupid. So many books treat kids like they're stupid, and I think kids are smarter than we are.
And they have the same fears and anxieties, you know, that are totally unrecognized a lot of times by...
Yeah, kids like darkness. It makes them feel normal. Wait, so which Stephen King books were you reading as a little girl where you were like, I'm over it?
The Dead Zone. I remember it being like, this takes a long time. It's like in John Saul, it's like, and then they killed everyone and took their skin off. And I was like, yes, I see where this is going.
That's better. That's hilarious. I love that. I remember reading Carrie as a little girl, just like, she can do what? I'm going to practice in my room alone. Okay, Samantha is asking us, is there a type of story you're scared to write but really want to? Are you going to write a romance novel? Have you written a romance novel?
I have never, and I always was like, get out of here. And actually, I thought that's probably the one I'd be scared to write, you know, because I just haven't used that muscle. But I think that would be fun.
Yeah, that makes me nervous. I've been writing fiction for myself forever, and I'm not necessarily afraid to put it out there, but I've had to prove myself so many times in my career that it was like a VJ, and then I had to prove that I was an actress and get rid of the VJ thing. And then once I became an actress, I had to prove that I could do other stuff, I could write. And so to go from being like doing memoir to being like, okay, well, I do fiction now, every time you change the game a little bit, you hope people stick around and don't think you're a charlatan. But yeah, putting out fiction is something that makes me nervous because people can make fun of my life. I lived it, and I can be like, no, this is real. But if it's something just out of your brain, you're like, oh, fuck, I got to back this up. How do I do that? It's trickier. Okay. When you write, how do you put the words together for different events you're writing for? And how do you get the characters to interact in the story? Oh, is it Alania? She says, sorry, so nervous. Don't be nervous.
Oh.
Maybe let's just talk about your writing process. Do you have like a certain word count you try to hit each day, or what's your schedule?
Well, yeah. So on a fresh, I will decide that I have to write some new material. Like I'm like, okay, a deadline's coming. I'd like to finish a book. I need to write say 1,000 or 2,000 words a day. That's a lot for me. And then I'll do that for a week or 10 days. And then I'll be like, okay, now I get to revise it. And the thing is, like, then you just put all the meat on the bones, and then it's just, you could spend like 2 more months or 3 more months, and you can turn 8,000 words into 30,000 words, or I could. That's kind of how I work. But I mean, it's really daunting. Daunting. That's my New York coming out.
It's daunting. That's the New York in you coming out.
It's very daunting when you're first sitting down to write. You get in your own head. And I think especially for a new writer, you might say, well, like, which tense do I use? And you'll go through 30 tenses and freak out about it. And how do you set up a scene and really stress over it? And I would say, just don't do that. And what I mean is just write whatever you write, and don't worry about it so much, because it'll come together. And the more you do it, the more natural it will feel. And the reason it feels unnatural right now is just because you haven't done it. It's not because there's any trick to it. You know, whatever tense you decide on is fine. If it's an inconsistent tense, it won't be in 2 months from now when you've been doing this for long enough.
It's muscle memory.
Yeah.
It's the same as, any exercise out there. Let's see. Would you consider your book to be made into a movie or TV show? Yeah, let's talk about that, because that's what I'm bugging for. Guys, just so you know, I'm already all over Sarah's butt trying to make her turn everything into a TV show or a movie.
And I would love to.
What's in development right now? Because you do have some stuff happening on that front. Are you allowed to talk about it?
I'm not allowed to, like, I don't think I'm allowed to announce anything, but I am doing something with Good Neighbors. And then Night Nurse is also, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about that, but that's somewhere that has a script written, as far as I know. And I don't know what else. I think that's it. The Audrey's Door.
Well, I think what everyone has to do is read all of your short stories and all of your books, and then just post on my Instagram page and tell me what you think we should do. And so if they go to your webpage, there's ways to get all your stuff on your webpage, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch that are free if you go link through, because those online shorts magazines have them up. And then, yeah.
All right, y'all got your homework assignment. Get to reading.
Yep.
Do it.
I mean, I fully stand behind that message. Hey. Well, I had to pop back on because I have the villainous role of cutting the event now that we have reached our hour marker. It feels like it's only been 5 minutes, though. The two of you have literally been such an absolute joy and treat to get to hear discussing this new book. So thank you so much, Hilarie, and thank you so much, Sarah.
It's so good.
All of the love in the comments. I don't know what you have gotten to see, but there is a lot of excitement and just so very, very, very excited. And also,
happy
awesome
birthday!
Yeah! Round of applause. Yay! And also, I do have one last question that, well, it's kind of a little bit of a double question. I always like to ask if you can or cannot, because I know with projects, there's projects you can and cannot talk about. But the question I like to ask is, what are you currently working on? So once they binge all the amazing books you have out, what can they be looking for next? And then also, either your social media or your website. We try and put the links down when we can so that people can stay up to date on everything and where they can find you and let you know how much they love your book.
Hilarie,
go, Sarah.
Oh.
No, you give us the rundown. It's your book birthday.
All right. So I'm working on my next book, and I have about half of it written, and sending it to my publisher to see if they like it. And if they don't like it, I'll write a different book. So
that's so accommodating of you.
And then I'm doing the film stuff. I'm doing the adaptation of Good Neighbors.
Cool.
And I'm thinking about adapting The Keeper, which was my first book, which would be a lot of fun.
Cool. I literally this week just started working on my next book, and I'm not painting anything in this house. And then my husband and I did an episode of The Walking Dead together during quarantine. That's going to air, I think, April 4th. So that was, we've never worked together. It was so fun because we both, like, we hate method actors. And so we both, you know, would have to do all this like crybaby stuff. And then the second they'd yell cut, we'd be fine. And we're like, why didn't we just work together always? This is so all that fun airs on April 4th. And then we're going to make Sarah write us a TV show. It'll be great.
So everyone go ahead, sign the petition that Sarah needs to write the TV series for them to star in. So just go ahead. People of the internet, do your magical thing of signing a petition and let's get it happening. I want to... seriously, thank you guys so much for joining. Sarah, happy book birthday. Good Neighbors is just a chef's kiss of so many amazing things together. So thank you for bringing us a phenomenal book and letting us celebrate with you. Hilarie, thank you for being a phenomenally awesome, amazing moderator.
Oh, you guys are fun. Thanks.
Yay. I know. And speaking of fun, thank you so much to all of the readers and everyone who joined us. You guys, amazing questions, amazing love in the comments. Thank you so, so very much. I could keep finding reasons to keep talking because you're so much fun to talk to, but I promise I will now end the event. And don't forget, everyone, go out and buy these absolutely amazing books. If you hit the purchase books green button down below, it will take you to the link. And on that note, we will say goodbye. Go sign the petition so we can get that TV series and more books. And we will see you all on the next one. Have a good night, everyone. Goodbye. Bye, Sarah. Bye, Hilarie.
Bye.